Welcome to Soundbreaker. In today's episode, we're talking to Jamie Hart, who is the founder and CEO of Hart and Song. Hart and Song is basically a company. It's about artist and music rights management. Am I right?
Yes, yeah,
Great, great. We're going to
exactly.
get into it in a second. Well, first, I want to thank you for joining us here on Soundbreaker, and for our listeners and viewers who might not be familiar with Jamie Hart, if you can give us a quick introduction about yourself, and then we're going to jump right into it. I'm sure it's going to be extremely insightful and inspiring.
Yeah. So thanks so much for having me.
My
My
pleasure.
name is Jamie. I've been working in the music industry for the past 10 years, primarily working with independent artists, songwriters, producers in different capacities. I'm sure we'll get into it. But I'm super passionate about supporting, artists and their careers and being able to manage that and properly collect for their royalties and advocate for themselves. So yeah, Heart and Songs. I am an artist manager. That's the artist side of things. And then the music rights management portion pertains to anyone that owns or should be collecting for music rights.
So you pretty much wear a couple of hats in Hart and Songs, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Lots of stuff.
Management side and collection side and empowering the artist, which is really important. I see a
Hmm.
lot of platform kind of really advocating for more, giving more empowerment for artists and more independence. A lot of artists want to
Yeah,
retain their independence these days. We're going to talk about that.
definitely.
Jamie, obviously, you decided to take that path into the music business and the music industry. What drove you to that path at an early age? If we go back, let's say in your early teenage years, and was it influenced by from home, mom, dad, the parents, or just you were passionate about the music business, or you were in a band?
Yeah, so I myself am a musician.
Uh huh.
I started performing when I was around like 10 years old. Singing was always something that was my favorite, so that's like my main instrument. But I later on learned how to play the guitar and piano by watching YouTube videos. I was in several music programs growing up. I was in a band. We recorded an EP. A lot of that was primarily influenced by my dad. He's a singer. He was in a bunch of cover bands. And so he was like the ultimate stage dad manager. My like fun claim to fame was like when I was doing my solo artist career in high school. I was number one on the Reverb Nation's indie pop chart when Reverb
Mm-hmm.
Nation was like a huge thing. And I had like a Facebook fan page of like 5,000 followers and likes, and my dad would help me manage that. And so I had like a stint of my own little like independent career because music was such a like safe haven place for me. Like no matter whatever was going on in my life, I just
Mm-hmm.
loved sitting in my room practicing for hours, and I loved performing on stage. Like once I got over the first couple times I performed where I was like, I think I'm gonna pass out. Um, I loved it. It's my most favorite moment. I still hop on karaoke stages whenever we go to Nashville, and I have my like moment. So music has always been super important to me, and it how I ended up being in the music business side really developed just by like learning different sides of the industry.
Amazing. So, did you work for anybody else before you decide to open and start your new venture? Hot and
Oh yeah,
Songs.
yeah. So I worked for a lot of companies in the music rights space in some capacity. My first job was at a small consulting firm that launched a publishing admin arm to help all of their creatives make sure they're collecting correctly. And then I worked at AdRev, which was specific to YouTube rights management. Um, and then I worked at SoundCloud. So we've kind of really hopped around a little bit. And yeah, so I would say that if I came out of the gate starting my own thing, I think this industry is really hard for that because one, you do need to put some time in to feel like you're seasoned and
Yes.
also know what you're talking about because there are just so many aspects of the industry. So going in and pretending like you are an expert, I I already have some imposter syndrome. That would just be I don't know what I'd be doing. You really have to learn by having different managers, being in different conversations with clients to get to the point where you can feel confident and run something yourself.
Well, I always say in the music business, I think it's in any business, but I'm in the music business, you're in the music business. I would say three things. Number one is knowledge. Number two,
Hmm.
network, which is the connection that you develop. And then
Yeah,
experience. You need it, definitely. Once you have that, you start to understand the market, to understand certain things. Then you can see the gaps. You see
definitely.
the challenges and the issues that are rising. And some of these issues and challenges, there's no fix for them, or nobody kind of took the initiatives and say, you know what, I think we should make a solution for this issue or
Hmm.
that issue. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
amazing. So, how long did you work? What was the first company you worked for before AdRev?
I worked for a small label rights company called Adarga Entertainment
Uh-huh.
Group. They were
Oh, no.
particularly in like Spanish music, which is really funny and ironic because I don't speak Spanish. But, at the end of the day, the music business is still the music business, no matter what kind
Mm-hmm.
of genre you're dealing with, what
Mm-hmm.
language, fundamentally, how to properly collect for your royalties remains the same. There are some
Yeah,
differences in different international territories.
yeah.
But I started there as an intern, and then we were about collecting for, 8 or 10 artists and all of their rights. And by the time I left, I was running that publishing admin department, and we were doing that for about 70 artists and creatives. And we were just manually registering all of their songs.
So you took that knowledge. Then it's funny that you went to work for AdRev, and AdRev focuses on a different side of the music business, which is a
Yep.
lot of people, don't have a lot of knowledge for, which is they call it the CMS side of it.
Yeah.
YouTube rights and channels and all of that. How long did you work for AdRev?
I worked there for 2 years. We were only in the office for about 4 months until the pandemic hit. So then a primary amount of that job was remote. So that's actually probably some of the part why I shifted to be more artist focused and direct rather than deep in the Excel sheets because
Hmm.
I was feeling really isolated where a bunch of people were having meetings during the pandemic with clients. I was like, oh no, I'm like deep in the CMS and in Excel files that are 1,000 lines long and doing VLOOKUP, like, which is I'm so grateful for that experience because, like
Oh,
you
amazing!
said,
Yes,
it's a part of the industry that it's a mystery. People don't know
yes,
about it.
yeah.
So that's valuable. But I definitely was getting a little bit lonely and I was like, I want to work with creatives directly. Obviously helping them represent their songs in the back end is very important. And I do think that that's how we landed where I'm at with Heart and Songs. I'm doing a very mixture of both sides of my brain. Like I get to be creative, artist management, artist development, but then I also can be analytical and
Hmm.
audit a catalog and make sure all of the metadata is correct and good to go for the collection side. It's super great. I just feel like my career path really developed my interests, and
Hmm.
then Heart and Songs, allowed me to kind of bring everything that I really liked about
But
all of those jobs together.
what triggered it? Like, what was the trigger, the point where you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm
Well,
going to do
yeah,
my own
so
thing. Like, where did you see the gaps? Where did you see all the challenges that artists or labels or companies or publishers that
yeah.
coming across? And obviously, you've seen some of the writings on the wall where the
Mhm.
future's heading. That more and more artists want to be independent.
Yeah. I mean, at AdRev, I was seeing the sheer issues in the publishing industry of, big publishers that have catalogs of hundreds of thousands of songs. If they're having these issues and they're having a hard time clearing up conflicts between different rights holders,
Hmm.
there can only be nothing but more issues with the independent space. And so that kind of allowed me to see that there's definitely a gap and such a huge need in that space. And spending time on Clubhouse and a lot of like artist development and like webinar spaces, I was just getting connected with more and more independent creatives that were like, we need your help. Like, we don't know, even if it was just like, we don't know what distributor to pick for our first EP release.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just started having conversations and kind of started my side hustle, which now is Heart and Song. So it was kind of like it was a slow path, but I actually appreciate that because when I did it at first, it was truly just because I wanted to do it. It was like a hobby. It was like free time, which is great and gives you a little bit of breathing room before you launch something all on your own. And then you have to really know how to run a business.
Yeah.
So that was helpful. And I was doing that. I would say I would started doing that kind of one-off stuff really
Yeah.
when the pandemic started because there was so much time on like the weekends and at night we weren't doing anything. We were stuck at home and we were basically on the internet. We were on Clubhouse. I was in a lot of the rooms that were talking about, just being an independent artist. And I just loved giving advice and helping them solve problems. So it was a very natural progression um, of how I saw that there's just so much need out there.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how it started.
So you run the whole Heart and Soul business operation by yourself, or do you have others that working with you? You pretty much you handle the whole thing yourself.
It's me, and then I have a wonderful like intern assistant who
Amazing.
actually went to my alma mater. One of my old professors connected me with her, and she recently graduated from the music industry. So that's been really fun to have one person on board. But yeah, for the most part, it's just me, figuring it out, building it from the ground up.
So pretty much you do management and guidance
Hmm.
for a lot of artists who coming in
Hmm.
new to the scene. Because like
Yeah.
as you said earlier, you just mentioned, you said, hey, I need help. Which distributor to choose? What do I
Hmm.
do? What's the right way to distribute a song? Have a video? Should I create a channel? Because you already have that, also that kind of CMS
Yeah.
artist channel background, and how important it is, or how much revenue you really an artist could make if he kind of be dedicated to that channel
Hmm.
also. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and should I sign with the label or shouldn't I sign with the label? Should I go with an indie? Is there a chance for me to go with a major? So how do you kind of direct your client when they come into you, or the artist, the music artist, whether they're a group or just an individual artist?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is meeting them where they're at. There's a lot of talk in this space. There's a lot of independent artists saying this distributor is bad, don't do
Correct.
this is good. And I do think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I really like to meet the client wherever they're at and then have them ask me questions. Are they asking me, is this really how you get playlists? Or like, is this really how you do this, or this? Because I think that's important to have those conversations just because there's so much misinformation out there. It's like
There is.
my friend got supported on Spotify and it's because she used this distributor. And it's like nothing is that black and white in this industry. It is all dependent on relationships, what kind of music you're releasing, what's the plan. Um, and like yeah, does your manager have a best friend at Spotify? Does your manager have, you know, you can't overlook those elements to it
No.
because it's a I mean in many ways for the independent artists, the music industry is not always fair. It is what it is. So it's like trying to get them to understand you have control over what you have control over and then there are some elements that are just kind of left up to chance, especially with like the competitiveness of TikTok and constantly new talented artists coming out of the gate. So really just meeting them where they're at and then asking them what their goals are,
Hmm.
not the goals of the people around them. Because I do find that it's hard to keep a clear path for an independent artist if they're looking at what all the peers are doing and what they're achieving. But it's like, do you really want that? Do you want to be a touring artist? Or does touring sound stressful for you and you really just like to make good music at home and make acoustic videos of you singing live in your bedroom? Um, I think that they often look at the big grand scheme of what success looks like for everyone, but it's
Hmm.
different. It's different for the individual.
Would you say the new trend now, more and more artists leaning towards independence? Nobody wants to be signed. They want to be free,
Yeah,
and they want
yeah,
to have control of their own publishing, their own distribution,
mhm,
their own everything. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, independence gives the power to like pivot because I mean, in the days that people are getting laid off and an entire team at a company can change just like that in a matter of a second, I think the artists no longer see, a safe haven and support. Let's say, for example, in a major label that's giving them a bunch of money because it's like, great, money is cool. We love that. There's stability in that. But that could also impact where your career goes if you lose your entire team at that label. If you lose your entire team that cared about your music, and then you're
Yeah.
stuck there in a deal. So I'm seeing a lot of more flexibility in distribution deals that are like, you're not owning my music. I get in advance that I hopefully can recoup in a year or
Hmm.
like a year and a half. So there is still some flexibility there, but then still some funding to make that EP or album or whatever they need the money for.
Hmm.
Um, that's most of the conversations I've been hearing, especially from the artists that got signed in the viral TikTok era and are now dropped from their label,
Mm.
because that's just happening all over.
Wow.
They were invested in their career at the beginning, but you know after that sixth release, the label was like, okay, so we didn't actually think that it was going to go this way. You don't seem to be chart topping pop star, so we're
Anymore.
going to drop you. And it's
Wow.
so sad and unfortunate. And like, there's a lot of independent artists that are having to learn those hard lessons
Hmm.
early in their career.
I mean, we both see there's a lot of changes in the music industry.
Hmm.
I mean, major changes, some takeovers, like having, as we heard yesterday, Downtown was acquired by, what is it, Virgin
Hmm.
Universal.
Yeah.
So they're going to be part of the Universal Virgin Group. They're no longer independent. And would that affect a lot of any of the artists they have on, or just something? And I know you were, and I know Adriv is part of Downtown
Yeah.
also. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty in
yeah,
all of this change because you don't really know what's going to happen until it happens. You don't know who they're firing, who they're, keeping, how are they approaching, all of the people that are working there
yeah.
and also the artists that are signed to those different companies. There's
Hmm.
no way to know.
What is the main focus of Hart and Songs? You focus on publishing, on distribution for artists, or on collecting royalty on artists that been signed and no longer signed. Or,
Mhm.
and would you take independent brand new artists, or most of the artists that you'd work with they already been signed to other labels and they're no longer part of that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest portion that I'm focusing on is a mixture of education on in the royalty collection space. So creating resources, participating and hosting webinars, just breaking down the different collections for master sound recording publishing collections. The primary focus is really just partnering with creatives that already have stuff going on and they don't know how to collect the money that they are owed. So,
Yeah.
for the most part, sometimes they're at a certain threshold where there's money coming in, but they might not be managed. So, they don't have a team member to make sure that they're collecting properly. Or I am partnering with management companies who have large rosters and they need someone to come in and just check every single one of those artists, producers, songwriters rosters to see if the publishing admin company successfully registered the recent, catalog they sent in. It's
Hmm.
a really, I mean, if you hear about it, it's a very admin kind of task. I'm just
Hmm.
going in and being the eyes that are really just focusing on this task,
Hmm.
because artist management and business management and lawyers, they have a lot of things they're focusing on. They're not just focusing on this. So my job is to be that niche person who is focusing on collections, both on the sound recording side, publishing side, neighboring rights, all of the above, and kind of get it all into shape and then send them on their way.
Publishing is a whole new world in its own, and not everybody understands it. Even people in the music business itself.
Yeah,
You always need an expert when it comes to publishing, because publishing has so many different ways or revenue streams that you
yeah.
could actually collect for. Neighboring rights, performing rights, this right, mechanical rights, all types.
Hmm.
And you kind of learn this knowledge at an should I say, earlier stage of your life when you entered the music business.
Yeah, And it's something that there is plenty of tools and books and education out there, but I do think that because it's so complex, it's
Very.
really hard to grasp it unless you're doing it.
Yes,
So
that's it.
all of my other jobs previously were the stepping stones, were my training areas to get to a point where I'm understanding this more. Now, like you said, things are still changing. Like the
Yes.
Music Modernization Act is still a new thing. The MLC is just about to hit their like 4 or 5 year anniversary. So, you know, it's going to continue to change. And I have to make sure that I'm continuing to educate myself the best way I can to best serve my clients. But there's nothing but questions when it comes to publishing and collections. A lot of people are like, that's a taboo subject. We just don't want to talk about it. We're just going to pretend that it doesn't exist and it's all being collected properly.
Tell us about some of the big artists that you have, you work with under Hot and Songs.
Yeah, I mean, so I've worked with a lot of amazing.
Throw some names at us. You know,
Okay, yeah.
drops or do some name dropping. How's that?
I don't necessarily like doing that. Um, there is a group of female producers here in Los Angeles, and they go by Lyre Music, so Lyre. Um, yeah, they all have their own individual like music projects, but they are doing amazing work in producing and writing in the K-pop world.
Hmm.
They are so impressive. Um, They've done songs for Black Swan, all of the big K-pop acts, and they're so talented. Alina Smith is kind of like the leader of the group, but they all equally contribute. I really highly recommend looking into them. And they're independent. They're just doing it their own, and they've really paved a way just being like, be a smart, talented person in the room, and like that will pay off. And they've gotten great relationships from that, and they're constantly coming out on like, huge K-pop tracks. So I really love them. Give them a shout out. Um, and previously, I've worked with some producers that have done a lot of work with like Lizzo.
Hmm.
TK made huge tracks, and
Hmm.
they've produced that. So Dan Farber and Sweater Beats are one of my clients through a management company that I partner with.
Hmm.
So I just make sure that everything is registered correctly on any of the new deals that they have coming through. And yeah, and Dan Farber was recently signed by Pulse. So we're very happy about that. But I before that happened, we had to do like a huge cleanup and a tidying up to make sure that that catalog is ready to go and be signed by a publisher. So there's so many different artists that I'm working with and producers at different stages. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, you been through the music business. You learned, you gained the education, the knowledge, and you established the network and the connection that you needed to, which drove you to start your own venture. And not just that, in your whole venture based on helping and pretty much really empowering artists and bringing them to the new century and new ways of doing
Mhm.
business. You know, how artists could be independent and still have control and educate them, as you said, which is really very important. A lot of artists don't have, not because of anything else. I think they're more focused on their art, which that's what they're supposed to do. But they need also, you bring in the aspects like, hey, you need to understand the business. You need to
Mhm.
understand about royalty and publishing and all of that. You're also a mentor and an educator. How by you doing, you said your webinars, you have your own workshops. Tell us about that. So you really, carry a lot of interesting and positive things towards helping artists. So let's talk about your workshop and your webinars and mentorship. You're pretty much really mentoring other artists and giving them advice what to do, what not to do, where to step, where not to step.
Yeah. Um, I love the idea of educating in this kind of field because it
Hmm.
feels like the most confusing part of the industry. And to me, I don't think that's fair. I think that there are plenty of independent artists that need to know this stuff, and
Hmm.
it shouldn't be locked behind, a lock and key. Like it should be out there and like available information. So, I mean, next year I'm going to try and figure out different ways that I can bring together the songwriter, producer community in LA and maybe beyond to just understand how they can advocate for themselves,
Hmm.
because that's how you make a better music industry, is allowing the creatives to have a say in what they're doing, because that just increases the chances of their
Yes.
success and decreases the chances of them getting fully taken advantage of, them signing a deal that includes sound recording, publishing, performance rights, and they don't even know that. So that's really my like most important
Hmm.
focus of things. I'm on the advisory board of We Make Noise, which is an incredible nonprofit kind of bringing gender diversity into the music industry, supporting, female music producers, engineers, mixing and like mastering, all of that.
Hmm.
Just I'm really trying to stay as busy as possible in all these different organizations, which is a lot easier when I run my own company. Like I don't have a boss telling me, no, you can't join this webinar or host this thing. So that's what I've really loved about the freedom of having my own company, is that I get to decide where I put my time, and it's kind of like giving back to the industry.
Mostly speaking engagement, is it online or you actually go and give certain events or
It's a
summits?
mixture of a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Uh-huh.
So I've done a lot of speaking at different music industry programs here at colleges. So the UCLA Music Business Program, NYU Los Angeles has a satellite campus
Hmm.
here, and all of those students are focused on like entertainment related major degrees. So not only just managing talent, but also working in communications around the entertainment industry and tons of things, planning events. So it's a mixture of like music colleges and universities, and then speaking at like the Music Biz conference or any of these music industry, being a mentor at South by Southwest. Um, just last year I kept really busy. I might tone it down this next year, um, but it's been fun. I mean, I think throughout all of those experiences, I'm able to meet more people, which is important to me.
Yes.
It's just expand the network of people knowing who I am and what I can help them with. Because even if they don't hire me right then and there, they always run across somebody who's confused about their sound exchange. And I always get the text. Like I get the text or the email being like, hey, you need to help this person. Like I found you a new client. Or like Jamie, you have to pick Jamie's brain because she knows everything about this. So yeah, it's a mixture of a lot of things. I'm doing a webinar for the We Make Noise organization in January, just like basic rights and royalty collection kind of webinar. And that's typically hosted on their hub, which is like a subscription base. But I think this
Hmm.
event's going to be open to the public, so I can convince people to be a part of We Make Noise because it's a wonderful organization.
What's next for Hearts and Songs for 2025?
Yeah.
What to look for? What to expect?
Yeah. I mean, I'm super excited to have a moment of hibernation for the end of the year because I've been quite busy this year. But what's next is definitely doing more events and more ways to engage with me,
Hmm.
just so I can help people at a larger scale. I might implement some office hours, where I can just have a huge Zoom call and people can just ask me questions. I think people sometimes are insecure about asking questions. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to like help as many people as possible, because that's important. It can't all just be clients that pay me to audit their catalog. Like I want to give back in free ways.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, who knows? I'm really excited for next year to just see how this goes.
Amazing. We're gonna definitely be on the lookout for it.
Thank you.
Jamie, you've been through it all, and you're still a mentor, and you're growing in that field. What advice would you give for artists who's starting in the business, who want to get into it, don't know what direction to take? Obviously, they need to get a hold of you, Jamie Hart at Hearts and Songs, Heart and Songs. And what advice you would have for somebody who taking the path you took? They want to carve their own path in the music industry.
Yeah, I think always be asking questions. and going and finding the answer. Because it's not going to be all clear at first, but there are so many incredible resources online and different podcasts to listen to just like fill your brain with information. When I was in college, I was listening to like podcasts like Switched on Pop that kind of broke down the musical breakdown of like top pop hits, which is like not really valuable in my work today, but it was super great to learn about how like the biggest songwriters are writing their hits. So it's like always be learning. Always be learning because there's nothing but things out there to be learning from.
Hmm.
And then honestly, take time to get to know yourself and what you actually deep down want. So then you can be prepared to make action items to go achieve that as an artist or even just as a business person in the music industry.
Well, before we say goodbye, any thoughts on where the music business is heading? I know there's a lot of changes, but in your opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of innovation that's going to happen, specifically in the music rights space, just because people are realizing it's such an untapped space in the industry. There are still tons of unmatched songs at the MLC where writers have yet to collect their money that's just sitting there. So I am familiar with some of the companies, but I think next year is going to be really big in innovation to help artists and creatives make sure that they're collecting correctly.
Well, so there's a lot of new music tech startups going to be coming in, and it's going to kind of, I would say, make an impact,
Yeah,
a positive impact on
definitely.
artists, and absolutely amazing. Well, Jamie, it was definitely a pleasure having you on the show today. Thank you for joining
Thank
us on
you.
Soundbreaker, and this concludes today's episode of Soundbreaker. Please make sure to follow us and on socials, and stay tuned for our next episode. Jamie, thank you again for your time. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to share the Soundbreaker podcast. And if you are joining us on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time.